Welcome one and all to another episode of Lens of Truth, a series breaking down all things Ocarina of Time. We'll be taking a detailed look at the story, dungeons, towns, mini-games, game mechanics, and way more that Ocarina of Time has to offer, so if you're interested to see more after this video concludes, do consider subscribing to stay tuned. On our last episode, we ventured up Zora's River in order to speak with the king about getting our hands on the Zora Sapphire, only to find out that the Zora Princess has gone missing. In today's episode, we venture into the belly of the beast to figure out a way to get her back. Let's take a look at our third dungeon adventure together through the lens of truth. So yeah, Princess Ruto was eaten by Lord Jabu-Jabu, which would be unprecedented behavior had it not been for Ganondorf's meddling. Somehow, we gotta get inside this big fish now in order to find her. This part of the game is probably the most confusing to me as how you were meant to figure out what to do here, especially since talking to the king doesn't really yield any meaningful directions. All we know is that Ruto was eaten while giving Lord Jabu-Jabu his meal, so perhaps we should take a closer look around for something that he'd like to eat. In the Zora's shop, we can see that they actually have fresh fish for sale. And aside from the fact that we already spent all of our money on magic beans in the last episode, our rupee pouch doesn't allow for more than 99 anyways, so 200 rupees for a fresh fish just isn't gonna fly this time. What we can do to collect a fish though is to scoop one up right beside this shop for free in one of our bottles. In collecting this fish, all we have left to do in order to enter Lord Jabu-Jabu's belly is to feed it to him, and it becomes pretty clear here just how Ruto ended up inside his belly. Starting off the dungeon in Lord Jabu-Jabu's belly, we simply have a door that opens with a switch. Moving past a little electric jellyfish, we walk into the next room where, oh, Princess Ruto is literally right there. What luck! Right off the bat, Ruto is confused by our appearing here and basically tells us to buzz off. She won't admit that she's in a spot of trouble, she doesn't care that her dad is worried about her, and she tells us she doesn't even know what we're talking about when we mention the message in a bottle that she wrote asking for help. Clearly, she's trying to remain strong in a tough situation, but the way she's acting might make this tougher than it needs to be. Next though, she does tell us that she actually can't leave right now, even if she wanted to, before promptly walking away from us and falling straight into a hole in the floor. The fact that we need to get her out of here for the king's sake means that we've got to follow her down here, and when we talk to her again, she assures us that she'll be fine on her own. Apparently she's been coming into Lord Jabu-Jabu's belly ever since she was a kid, but she says what's going on here now is actually quite unusual. Electric jellyfish, strange holes in the floor, you get the gist. Then she also lets slip that her precious stone was, well, I guess maybe we'll get back to that later. She tells us to leave once again, but in pestering her with conversation once more, she caves in and gives us the honor of carrying her around if we really want to get her out that badly. The one catch is that she says she will not leave here before we track down the item she's looking for. It's pretty safe to assume she's lost the spiritual stone in here, so it's actually within our best interest as well to help her find it before leaving the giant fish anyway. So we pick up the princess and we've got to make our way through a whole dungeon with her in our care. Through this door next to us, we come into a room with a bit of a dip in the middle and a button on the floor. Throwing the princess up onto the next ledge, we can step on this button to fill the gap with water, both getting us high enough to climb this area for a few pots, one of which that will get us another fairy we can bottle up, as well as allowing us to climb up to the next side where we've thrown the princess. Through another switch-operated door, we enter a bit of a puzzling room. There's nowhere to go here but swimming through this little tunnel, and doing so leads us to a regular business scrub willing to sell us Deku seeds for our slingshot. Not very necessary right now, so we're just gonna move on. Returning to the princess, we find this strange elevator comes down that we can ride back up to where we started the dungeon before falling in that hole from earlier. Returning to the room riddled with holes, we step carefully around all of them in order to reach a door on the other side. Here we have a nightmare of hallways, many of which are being blocked off by these weird pulsating tendons. We find a button to press and unlock one of these doors, and inside are a number of enemies called stingers that we can take out, but not much else. Of course, in Zelda fashion, if we take out all of the enemies in this room, it'll reveal a chest, and inside of this chest we find an item that we'll be using from here onward in the rest of this dungeon, the boomerang. This item is pretty sweet and allows us a ranged attack that doesn't require ammo like our slingshot does. Plus, it can retrieve items for us and even stun enemies as well, so all in all, this is a win. Leaving this room to try our luck at another door within these halls, we find a door activated by a blue switch. The only thing about this one is that the switch needs to stay pressed down with consistent weight to keep the door open rather than just being pressed once. Hopefully Princess Ruto doesn't mind, but we're gonna have to set her on this button now for a while we check out the inside. In this room we find a crazy looking tendril coming from the ceiling and moving around quite a lot. With nothing else of interest inside of this room and the fact that this tendril swings at us when we get close, I think it's safe to say that we've got to take it out. The perfect tool for the job is of course our brand new boomerang, which can fly up and smack it good up to 4 times before we've gotten rid of it completely. As soon as we do this, we're awarded another chest holding a dungeon map this time. Leaving this room, Princess Ruto ends up being pretty upset that we just set her down and left her there, but thankfully isn't mad enough to keep us from carrying her. We have to take her with us in the end of things, so it's probably best we don't try our luck with her too much. Looking down the hall to our left, we can notice that the big red thing that stood in our way before is now completely gone, which probably means defeating this big tentacle also destroyed the big pulsing tendon here. We're gonna want to take out as many of these things as there are if we want a fair shot at looking everywhere for this item Ruto's after. In this room down the hall, we have a bunch of bubbles bouncing around and a random timer appearing under our magic meter as well. In a random squeeze of time, we take out all the bubbles and are rewarded with yet another large chest, this time holding the dungeon's compass. There was another hall that had a red pulsing thing in the way of it though, so since we cleared out this one before, we should check on that one too. Sure enough, with new access to this door, we walk through it only to find another one of these guys hanging from the ceiling. Rinse and repeat, we defeat it, opening up yet another area that used to be blocked off. Through this final area in this series of halls, we find our final fight with these weird tentacles, but this time it's surrounded by a bunch of electric jellyfish. We weren't able to defeat these things earlier with just a slingshot, but now equipped with a brand new boomerang, they seem to be no trouble at all. We take out this last tentacle and a final pulsing green thing is removed from the room we saw earlier with all the holes in it. We take a fall down the hole that the green thing was blocking, we walk through the next door, and we reach a large room with a central platform. On top of this platform, Ruto, from her elevated position above our head, spots the item she's been looking for, and of course, it's the spiritual stone of water. Upon her demand, we throw her up on the platform to go get it, and before she can come back to us to get out of here, the platform rises up into the ceiling and Ruto lets out a scream. The door locks behind us, the platform lowers again, and now we've come face to face with a big ugly octopus creature called a Big Octo. Wait, really? They just called it Big Octo. Alright, I guess that's it then. Anyways, to defeat this big octo, we need to chase it around in a circle, hit it with our boomerang, and then hit it with our sword. Then the same thing happens again, but about 3 more times. When the big octo finally goes down, the platform lowers, allowing us to step onto it, and we rise up into the ceiling looking for Princess Ruto. From here we have a little room that we have to hit these tall jelly things with our boomerang in order to stun them and make them function as platforms, and then we have an elevator that connects to the first room of the dungeon, giving us access to another door that we didn't have before. To open it though, we need to put weight on this blue switch again, and we don't have the princess with us anymore. Fortunately, there are some boxes lying around that can help us solve the situation, allowing us into the next room that introduces a pretty cool little mechanic to us. In this room, climbing up the rough wall, we can see a switch across from us that will open the next door that we need to go through, but we can't hit it just by throwing our boomerang straight at it. Instead, it turns out that Z-targeting something and then throwing our boomerang gives us less of a straight throw and more of a rounded toss, allowing us to bypass the wall directly in front of us and hit the switch. I just think this is a cool way to show the player that there's often more than just one way to use any given item in your collection, but this video is already getting pretty long and we're just about at the end of the dungeon now, so let's keep going. Going through this final door, we get locked in again. In front of us, we see a gigantic parasite feeding on Lord Jabu-Jabu from the inside. Enter the bioelectric anemone, Baronade. Instantly, we see where the electricity comes from with these satellite dish-shaped tentacles and the large jellyfish hugging the body of the beast, and as soon as we lock onto the enemy, we're actually locked onto these tendons attached to the ceiling. Just like those big ones swinging around from earlier in the dungeon, we just need to detach them from the ceiling with our boomerang, and the next phase of the fight will begin. All the jellyfish start to spin around the room in this phase, and all we have to do is manage to stun him with our boomerang and get some cuts in. From here, he starts spinning a lot, and all we can do is hope to throw our boomerang through the jellyfish to stun him again, at which point, he'll sink into the floor and give us a bit of a chance to start taking out the jellies as much as we can before he gets up again. Once we've killed all the jellyfish, Baronade begins spinning wildly around the room, and all that's left to do now is to throw the boomerang and swing the sword. Between our openings on this parasite, it'll sink into the ground again and start firing off electric beams towards us, but right afterwards it'll get up and spin again, and you already know what to do. After a couple phases of this, the monster finally goes down. We walk over and pick up a well-earned heart container, putting us at 7 total hearts, and walk through the blue portal where Ruto is already waiting. With a little embarrassment in her rosy cheeks, she berates us one last time for taking so long to save her, and we teleport out of Lord Jabu-Jabu. We are now treated to a cute little scene between Princess Ruto and Link. She says that through all the action we just saw, she thought we looked pretty cool. Cooler than she thought we would anyways. As we did save her life, she offers to give us something in return and asks what we'd like. Of course, we were here primarily for the spiritual stone that we know she has on her, so we ask her if we can have it. Well, it turns out Ruto was told specifically by her mother only to give the stone to the man she intends to marry, making it a sort of engagement ring. So I guess Link just got engaged to a Zora princess? Whatever, man, there are worse things than getting accidentally engaged to a princess, alright? We get the sapphire, and we're finally equipped with all 3 spiritual stones we need to rescue the realm. We kept Ganondorf from getting all of them, and things are looking pretty good. The king and Princess Ruto both seem pretty happy about how things have turned out as well. On our way down the river, it's pretty clear that the boomerang was the item we needed in order to collect one of the heart pieces that we grabbed on our last episode coming up the river. Swimming down the river, we collect a bunch of green rupees and head back to Hyrule Field. All we have left to do now is talk to Zelda again about the next steps we need to take in order to restore peace to the land, and things should be all good, but we'll go over all of that next week in the next episode of Lens of Truth. As always, if you do like these sorts of videos, do consider subscribing as they come out on this channel every single Friday. If you'd like to see last week's episode or the playlist holding the entire series to watch it from the start, those will be on screen now. As for me, that's my time. My name is Myloe, and I'm out.